All right, let's get started. So, at Guidebook, we focus on providing simple ways to build and distribute apps. And one of the areas that we've seen impacted the most by this technology is higher education, hands down. Higher ed professionals are being told, and they know inherently, that they need to embrace mobile communication, but the path to doing so isn't always really clear. And mobile apps can often be expensive and time-consuming to develop, especially when we're talking about just for one individual event or an office. But luckily, Guidebook has developed a way to make it easy to roll out apps for your office and events throughout the year, and career services offices have particularly been taking advantage of this. So today we're going to take a look at how you can use apps for career services, whether it's to deliver year-round information or to support individual career fairs. And we're going to hear from some people who have successfully been doing this. So speaking of, well, before we get to that, let's actually go with a poll here. This is an interactive poll that you can click on, and we will see the results. So just looking out there to see what our audience makeup is, are you currently using an app to communicate with students at your career fairs? And it looks like the majority of people are not currently using mobile technology. We've got a few in the fray here that are. That's great. Hopefully will learn more about that today. It looks like about evening out around 85% of the people with us today are not currently using apps for their career fairs. I got one more question for you. Do you plan on using an app in the next year to communicate with your students at a career fair? And I have yes, no, and it depends on how this webinar goes as the options here for your answers. It looks like a lot of people are curious to hear about what we have in store today. So that is encouraging. I think we should jump right into it with our speakers. All right. So today we have Ashley Bailey with us from Kansas State University. I'm happy to have Ashley here. She is currently the marketing coordinator for the Kansas State University Career Center. Her role includes marketing and promotional management, website administration, university relations, and digital media. She played an integral role in launching a career fair app for the center. And in 2015, she received her master's in visual and digital media from IE Business School in Madrid, Spain. So welcome, Ashley. We're happy to have you here today.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. And Matthew McHugh is a customer success associate here at Guidebook, meaning that he helps people figure out the best way to take advantage of apps in order to communicate effectively with their audiences. Matthew has worked with all types of industries, but particularly enjoys helping out universities and has helped build his fair share of career fair apps. So Matthew, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
All right. So I want to kick this off with a question for Ashley. Being in the marketing area of the Career Center at Kansas State, obviously one of your main goals is to communicate effectively with the students at the university. So what are some of the main challenges that you end up facing when you're trying to reach students on campus, and what are some of the current channels that you use to get in touch with students and spread your message?
So basically with any campus, it's always that difficulty of reaching students, getting past all the other marketing noise that's happening from other colleges and departments. So that's something that we really have to fight against, and reaching that diverse student body as well. Some of the current channels that we use are press releases that go to a K-State Today, which is basically a news release that targets students or faculty. We use social media. We currently have Facebook and Twitter that we're really active on, and this year we're going to get really active in Instagram. We also use the digital signage across campus, the digital boards with flyers and stuff. We use OrgSync announcements, email messaging to individual colleges, departments, and liaisons through our advisors, flyers, banners, sandwich boards, in-office word of mouth, and sometimes quarter sheet handouts at different events to help promote other events.
So basically what I'm hearing is that you use a lot of different channels to communicate with students, and I think that is the name of the game these days, is diversifying the ways in which we are telling people, because unlike maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it's not quite as easy to rely on one single communication channel to be the silver bullet when it comes to reaching students. And I know in my conversations with higher ed professionals that they're often lamenting the fact that email is not as reliable as it used to be. Students often don't even check their university email accounts. They'd rather check their personal email accounts. And social media, it becomes harder and harder these days to reach everyone with social media. And of course, we want to be inclusive in our communications. Matthew, as someone who has worked with career services departments getting apps up and running, as a kind of being on the technology side of things and on the vendor side of things, what are some of the initial concerns and goals that they come to you with when they're saying, we want to get this app channel up and running for ourselves?
So, the first steps are the most important. And I think a lot of, at least, Ashley's success has to do with, do you have a good amount of data? Is it organized nicely? And do you have a plan to start promoting it? So I think a combination of, gathering all the assets you need, all the things that you want to present to your students, and then having a good idea and a good timeline as to when you want to start promoting it.
Yeah, I think that's really a great point, is that, okay, we have this information, we have data, we want to get it into a mobile format. We necessarily haven't done that before. And then, once we format it into a mobile format, we want to make sure that people actually use the thing. I think those are all valid concerns, and luckily we're going to address all of that today in our webinar. So let's get going. First of all, I just want to touch on maybe some of the reasons that departments and career services jump into using an app. And this is the latest number that I was able to find from Pearson, and it was from 2014. So it was saying that 84% of college students own a smartphone. I think it's safe to assume that 2 years later, that's probably jumped up to 90% or so. But I don't think this is really a surprise to anyone who is walking around on college campus today. We inherently know that students are on their phone. We want to meet them where they are, and where they are is looking at that smartphone. Of course, there is also the benefit of having some paper and cost savings along the way. Printing out those booklets can often be quite an expenditure during the year, but then also, you have the trouble of printing out a stack of career fair booklets that are out of date the second that you print them. And so we're often handing out not only booklets, but addendums on the day of, and that can get quite troublesome. And then finally here, the idea that we have the ability to dynamically update the information within the app at any given time, again speaks to the idea of we don't want to be stuck with printed information. Things change, and especially with career fairs, employers can be RSVPing right up until the week before the event. And so having that information in a digital format allows us to stay up to date and make sure that we're always delivering the most relevant information and correct information at any given time. The thing that I also like to think about when it comes to using apps, no matter for what purpose, is the idea that it opens up this two-way communication that wasn't there before. Of course, we have the ability to send push notifications with apps. So those are the little messages that show up on a home screen, even if a user isn't currently engaged with the app. And that's a great way for a group of people to be alerted about something immediately. But then with the app, you also have the ability to include surveys and embed feedback forms into the app. So we get the cycle of communication going there where if there is an urgent notification that needs to go out, yes, you have the ability to do that. If you want to also solicit information from the audience through the mobile app, that is an option as well. And then one of the more subtle things, but I think quite important, is this idea that we can derive lots of metrics from the use of an app. And with Guidebook, you actually have the ability to see some pretty detailed information about the way people are using the app that you deploy. And we'll go a little bit into that later, but that is a way of listening to your usership and understanding how they are consuming the information that you've given to them so that you can continue to iterate and not only make your events better, but make the app better as well. There's also the idea of having a central communication hub, and I think for a lot of departments that is a major benefit of having an app. So with Guidebook, you have the ability to deploy a branded app that looks like your university, has your university's branding and colors, and that app can be found in the iOS store, it can be found in the Android Play Store, and that then provides you this central place to then publish content. And this is the shot here of K-State's Career Services app. And inside of the app, they publish individual guides for each of their career fairs. So you can see inside of this app there are currently 2 guides which correlate to 2 career fairs. There's the All-University Career Fair and the Hospitality Career Fair. We're going to take a closer look at the Hospitality Career Fair guide here in just a minute. But I've got a question for Ashley before we move on. When it came to implementing an app for K-State, I know that you actually jumped into the app process while it was already being discussed, but what were some of the deciding factors that your office came to when they said, yes, we are going to go with mobile communication as our main source of information dissemination?
So I think one of the things that we thought about was meeting students where they were. So students, like you said in your statistics, are mobile. They're always on their phones and they have it at their fingertips at all times. So the ability to have that kind of information on the day of the fair or even before the fair to let students research was definitely a key factor. And also one of the other key factors was being able to make the changes quickly. So like you said, the printed booklets, they can easily go out of date very fast the day of the fair if we have employers needing to change tables for whatever reason, or if somebody cancels last minute or we have a last minute addition. The ability to make those changes and have it available for the students as quick as possible is really awesome. And then the other feature of Guidebook that we might not have thought of at the beginning, but later we realized was a great feature, was having the ability to be accessible to all students, whether they're using a mobile phone, a tablet, or the desktop version. That's really important in higher education, is to be accessible to all students that might not have the same capabilities as another.
Yeah, Ashley, I'm actually really glad that you brought that up. I saw a question about that come through in the chat window, which was, what about the students who don't necessarily have smartphones? There are going to be students who don't have smartphones, which is something that we try to anticipate here at Guidebook. And so the good part about an app with Guidebook is, yes, it's available for Google Android systems. It's available for the Apple iOS system. But it also is available in a web browser as well. And you don't have to build those things individually. They are automatically generated and populated from the information that you put. We can get into that a little bit deeper here in a minute. But Matthew, one question I got for you, what are some of the earliest things that an office should think about or accomplish before they actually go in to publish an app? How can they prepare themselves for this undertaking?
I would say, think about that very first event, and then put yourselves in the shoes of the student, in the shoes of the user, and say, well, what do I want to present to them? Not only that, but how do I want to kind of present it? How do I want to streamline that information for the user? I think that would be my main focus.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely sort of narrowing in on a theme here, which is how there's a lot of information, especially at a career fair, and how can we make that digestible and easy to use for a student? And so we are going to jump right into that now, which is what is in a career fair or in a career services app. So we're going to actually talk about 2 different types of apps today. We're going to briefly look at office guides. So, within your Shell app, you can have the ability to publish many different guides. And a lot of universities actually choose to publish a guide for their office. And NC State is actually a great example of this. So this is information that a student has access to year-round. And you can see there's a little bit of information there about careers at NC State. It also links and embeds their Career Development Center website inside of the app. And so they have a nice mobile-friendly website already, and it displays beautifully inside the app. But there's a smooth transition there. It's kind of a seamless experience where they don't have to exit the app and go into a web browser. It's just embedded in the guide right there. So they have lots of great resources on their website already. This just makes it a little bit more accessible and gives students a central place where they know they can access all this information. Some other things that are in the NC State Career Development Guide are ways to contact the staff, a staff listing, and then of course a list of upcoming career fairs so that students always have those dates in their mind. And then we also have all of their social media presence is collected into one space. I know it's often hard to, we feel like our social media channels are kind of disparate and sometimes people are randomly stumbling into them. This gives you a great way to centralize that into one place so that people can see the Twitter feed, they can see your Facebook page, they can see your YouTube videos all in this one app. And then we also have the ability to send messages through Guidebook as well. So they can notify students and send messages to the inbox right inside the app. A really clever way of using the product. It's something that you can set up to be used all year round. And again, creates that centralized resource for students to come back to when they want information during the year. But the main star of today's show are the career fair guides. And this is where we're going to jump into the use of Kansas. So Ashley, before we get too deep into the features of the app and how it's laid out, you know, Matthew mentioned that there's a little bit of a strategy perhaps that needs to go into how you're assembling your information before you make it digital. What were some of the strategies that your office had before you took the leap off the cliff?
Right. So some of the things we thought about was definitely doing the branded versus the general Guidebook app, and we decided to do the branded because we wanted it specifically for our office so that students could find it easily. Our other strategy was we just decided to try it for our largest all-university career fair in the fall to test out how we liked it and see how that went. So since it was the largest fair, we figured that would be our biggest demographic to see how many students we could get to use it. And then from there, we kind of thought about the content. So what are the most important things that we want in the app? So we thought about, you know, especially the employer list, the floor map, did we want interactive or static? So just thinking about what are the key things that students look for when they're researching for the career fair. So I think definitely that was how we figured out our content, was what do we need, and then what extra can we add.
Cool. And I think that's actually a really good point about the fact that you made a conscious decision to have a branded app that looked like your office and had your office's branding attached to it. And some of you on the call today might actually be on a campus where Guidebook is already implemented, and you may have an app already in the App Store. And so it could be as simple as working with your current Guidebook administrator to just hop on that plan and publish your own career fair guides inside of the app, which is the model that NC State uses actually. But Ashley, you were talking about content, so I think it would help if everyone could see what exactly we're talking about when we're talking about career fair guides. This is a look at K-State's. So again, we've seen the app itself. On the left-hand side, you see the splash screen. That's what pops up when you first open the app. And then the different guides for the different career fairs are published inside of that. And on the right-hand side, we've actually now tapped into the Business and Hospitality Career Fair Guide. So this is that home screen here. We get a little bit of information about the career fair itself. And then when you take a look at the menu in this screenshot on the left-hand side, you'll get an idea for some of the features that K-State included, including, of course, an employer list, probably the most important part, a floor plan, some tips for students, tips for employers, a place to take notes. They also embedded their homepage or website, and then links to social media. So a lot of stuff going on inside this guide. You can see in the center there, that is the list of the employers. And I think it's important to point out that there are little plus signs next to each one of the employers. That allows students to add that particular employer to a personally curated list that lives on their app. So if they want to go through the week before, the night before, and make a hit list and say, yes, I know I want to visit these 10 companies, they have the ability to do that. On the right-hand side, in that screenshot, you'll see